All right, everyone, we are here. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. So excited to be back again with another incredible episode of Just Shilling. And we have another great guest in Dadi today. So thank you for joining us. And before we do get into it, folks, just want to go over some quick ground rules. First and foremost, nothing that we discuss today is going to be considered as financial advice, and the opinions shared are of our own and do not necessarily represent our respective organizations. But we are all adults, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. It's going to be insightful, it's going to be educational, it's going to be conversational, and definitely entertaining, no doubt. So before we do get into this and kind of go back to the genesis of when your interest started in digital asset space, Dadi, just bring us back a little bit and give us that 30-second elevator pitch about who you are and your organization you represent and what you got going on today.
Thank you, Trevor, for having me. Really excited to join you. So I'm Dadi Kristjansson. I'm from Iceland. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Viska Digital Assets. We run a liquid crypto hedge fund out of Iceland with a discretionary mandate. And we launched the fund in 2022, but I have been working in the financial industry since 2007. So coming from out of college in 2007, was lucky to start in before the banking crisis. But I don't know if people realize, but in Iceland we had a really harsh banking crisis where every bank collapsed. They were all listed on the market here, and they all went to zero. So
wow,
we had a really tough time in Iceland during the banking crisis. But it was So I managed to work before and after the crash, as we call it. It's kind of a milestone in the Icelandic financial history. And we need to kind of to rebuild the financial industry after the collapse, which was,
wow.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
That's super interesting, because I don't think maybe a lot of people even know that was going on when the folks in the U.S. we had our financial crisis of our own as well too a year later, and then obviously in 2009 with Bitcoin being created. So it's really interesting how all of this kind of comes full circle. So take us back to, I would say, your transition when you moved from traditional finance to kind of being in the digital asset space, and maybe even take us back a little bit to that what was happening in 2019 when you first started kind of really investing in crypto while you were actually still working in TradFi. And what made you realize then at that time that, this digital asset thing wasn't just a fad and it wasn't a passing trend?
Yeah, so I was working as a partner at an investment bank in Iceland at the time, and I had been in various roles before that. I was a CEO of a brokerage company and doing all kinds of stuff. So I was just very focused on my job, and hadn't really looked into crypto until I kind of luckily heard about Bitcoin. I heard there was this person on a podcast talking about just proper, like, real investments, like traditional investments, and he all of a sudden started talking about Bitcoin. I really just hadn't really gave it any thought. I just thought it was kind of magic internet money with no value, and then it just kind of all made sense on how he talked about it. And it was at the same time where I was looking around. I was trying to figure out where to allocate capital, like personally, and was looking at especially the bond market, which I have been of the opinion that has been broken for a long time. And this person made the case that Bitcoin was kind of a great response to this broken bond market, and that kind of sparked some interest within me that I started digging deeper, and as people in crypto know, once you start digging, you just go right into this rabbit hole, and as they also say, once you see, you can't unsee. So yeah, I just found Bitcoin being extremely interesting. And it made so much sense as a system with kind of certainty, with the issuance schedule being predetermined, which is like the exact opposite of how we print money within the traditional systems, and all the incentives are to keep on printing and increase the depth, etc. So that was kind of my first move, and I just only invested in Bitcoin at first. but I was just, during the day, I was just the regular TradFi guy, and we were doing really well, and it was a great time in Iceland in traditional finance. So this is something I was looking into, at night once I left my job, and I started thinking about crypto. And at first I was kind of, I wasn't really talking about this because crypto was definitely not a big deal in Iceland.
Yeah.
It was kind of frowned upon. We have not been, at the forefront of this crypto innovation here in Iceland. So I wasn't really talking much about it at first, but I really, once you find something interesting, you often need to bounce ideas with someone, and I started to approach some of my friends from traditional finance, and especially a couple of them, and one of them took the bait, and we started constantly debating this, reading about this, and
amazing.
And that is my co-founder at Viska today, Gulli Gíslason. So he was also working in traditional finance, and another friend of ours, he really didn't want to look into this, and he's still working in TradFi, but me and Gulli are now in Viska. So it's been an interesting journey, and obviously I see opportunities in other than Bitcoin as well. But this is kind of typical start where you kind of understand Bitcoin and the monetary properties, and for me it's like a very interesting safe haven asset, even though it's not perceived that way by the majority of the world today. But I think we will get there. We can go deeper into that later.
We are definitely making progress, and there's so much going on. It seems like we can never really keep up with all of the progress, and especially in those last 3 months, I feel like this space moves really fast, but I feel like the last few months have just been accelerated to a pace that's quite incredible. So you built Viska, back in 2022, but your experience obviously in finance goes back much further than this, as you were mentioning. So talk a little bit more about how, your background in TradFi kind of helped shape the way you built your organization, and what really kind of was that vision that you had in mind when you first started the company, and how has it kind of morphed to where you are today?
Yeah. So, as I spoke about earlier, I got more and more interested in crypto, and wanted to think about it more and more. And when I finally saw that it made perfect sense to start a fund in Iceland, which nobody had done, like there was nobody helping institutional investors, nobody helping high net worth individuals or family offices with this. Maybe some were interested, but they didn't really know how to do this. So I just saw an opportunity to be able to work in the industry that I believe in the most. I feel we have an up and coming asset class that will outgrow any other asset class in the coming years. And so we merged together with, so me and Gulli, the TradFi guys, merged with the guys from tech industry in Iceland. So they have been mining Bitcoin in Iceland. So we have a diverse and strong team within Viska. And our vision, like the group's vision, is to introduce this asset class to especially the high net worth individuals, family offices to start with, and then eventually the institutions, the insurance companies, the pension funds, etc. So we just started out, and we wanted to be, because as I said earlier, crypto was kind of frowned upon, not taken seriously in Iceland. So what we needed to make sure is that we do everything super proper. So we launched the fund in Iceland. It's domiciled in Iceland. We have, by the financial authorities, we have a license to operate a fund. So for as you should call, accredited investors.
Yes.
Our counterparty policy was super strict and is super strict, so which has been very useful, as you know. We launched the fund in July 22, and just in November that year FTX blew up, and I know for a fact that a lot of funds were hurt by that and even had to close down. So we didn't have any direct impact of that. Obviously, there was some collateral damage with markets going down, but we were, due to our strict counterparty policy, due to our management of risk, we have managed to stay out of trouble in all these kind of volatility events and counterparty risk that have been going on for the past 3 years. We even managed to be up in 2022, which we are really proud of.
Nice.
But I mean, this is something that you can take from TradFi, being working in, you know, a proper bank or an institution where you have all these procedures and protocols. And as I said, I was also this one time was a CEO of a brokerage firm, and you had to, you know, make sure you do check all the boxes with the authorities on KYC, AML, all that kind of stuff, all the procedures, and that was a great experience. And this is something that we held in high regard with everything that we do. So that was kind of the route, because we think that this industry is going to grow so much. You just have to make sure you're there the whole time, you know. Blow up, don't fuck it up, excuse my language, sorry, on the way. So I mean, just make sure you have the risk management, the counterparty risk, all that stuff, and also just the proper setup. Use the proper teams, like the fund admin, all that stuff is super important.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like that too, you know, and you were able to form a team when there really, as you mentioned before, a lot of people that weren't, I would say, true believers at that point. So can you also help us understand maybe a little bit about the dynamic of Iceland, you know, about the population, about, you know, finance in general, which makes it a very unique place to do this kind of business, and then also too, maybe how it's changing in terms of the overall view and acceptance of this as an asset class, being cryptocurrency?
Yeah, I think, you know, Iceland is a really small country. It's only around 400,000 people, which obviously sounds crazy small, but we are also a very wealthy nation. So there's a lot of millionaires in dollar terms, or multi millionaires. We also have the biggest, I'm pretty sure it's the biggest pension system per capita in the world. So we have a really strong pension system. There's a lot of wealth here, and this wealth is not allocated to crypto yet, but just in a really small amount. And that's where we see the opportunity. We want people to be able to get good diversification, and that was and it was tricky for us when we started, because, you know, in 22 we had obviously no track record. We hadn't even started. For our fund, we just had a story to tell, and I'm so grateful for the investors that joined us in the beginning. Now we have about 70 investors with us in this journey, and it's been constantly growing year by year. But it's an educational process. So we have had, you know, in this room, I'm sitting in this big meeting room where we've had so many of Iceland's investors coming in and listening to us talk about crypto. We have a big presentation where we can be speaking for, you know, 2-3 hours on all kinds of aspects of this. And it's a marathon, you know. It's not a sprint. We're just planting seeds, trying to educate investors. Fortunately, some of them have joined us, which is great, and it's also been good for them, because Viska has been the best performing fund in Iceland of all asset classes for the past 3 years. So the investors are pretty happy about that as well. So, but it's a complicated, you know, the blockchain technology, talking about Bitcoin, talking about, you know, all kinds of smart contracts and all that stuff to people it's just very exotic to people that haven't really done any work on it. So sometimes I feel like a teacher, like an educator, but it's also what I love to do. So we're just trying to spread the word. It's going to be beneficial for us. It has been, and I think it will continue to do. But and then this is what we want to do also, not just in Iceland, but obviously we want to be a good voice for the industry globally.
And expand as well too. And you have a master's in financial economics, and a lot of your experience with being a securities broker. So how do you really kind of balance your academic knowledge you've gained from school, and obviously your experience in TradFi, with the kind of practical lessons that you've learned in this fast-paced space today? And I think this is maybe a question too for people in the audience that are maybe on the fence. They have a TradFi background themselves, and they're trying to make that transition. So really kind of how do you balance this? Because I'm sure that it's a lot to balance.
Yeah. What crypto has taught me, and my partners that maybe come from different backgrounds than me have taught me some open-mindedness, and that's actually something. I'm actually studied engineering before I went to the master's degree in economics, so I'm kind of a rigid kind of guy. I'm not the typical the typical crypto guy you would think of. I love math, and I love to know exactly how everything goes. But so I wouldn't be perceived as the typical crypto guy. But what has been great is to be more open-minded, because the world is changing, and you need to be able to adapt, and you need to be open to new things, and that's, I think, key to success. However, there's also good to have structure, and this is something you learn from from like the academic background. Engineering taught me a lot. It kind of teaches you how to study, how to learn new things, how to adopt new things. So it kind of teaches you a framework to use to be able to capture and gather information and kind of get a decent result out of it. So I think it's just a good combination. But I would say I would be, before I went to crypto, I was too, I don't know if that is the right word, like rigid or like, I think I'm happy that I'm now more open-minded, and that's partly due to obviously my good partners here at Viska, and in this industry you need to be open-minded. Things are evolving so fast. There are new angles of all kinds of things happening all around. So I think that's that's kind of
a big key. Big key for sure. Being open-minded, and I think remembering the lessons learned, but being willing to forget some of those things because it doesn't necessarily apply to this space, because it is just so unique. And looking back at your time working in TradFi, do you think the speed and nature of kind of working with like equity and bond deals influence how you view this fast moving world in digital assets? And how do you kind of manage the volatility of the crypto market compared to these more traditional financial markets that usually aren't as up and down, or, kind of topsy-turvy, if you will?
These are very different markets. For sure. I mean, my focus has historically mostly been on local equities, local bonds, been issuing a lot of bonds for municipalities, for companies, etc. And this is nothing like crypto. This is not as fast moving. You're kind of, just working with the companies, trying to figure out ways and covenants and all that stuff, like how we need to structure things, and you have to take the dialogue to the pension funds, which are usually the biggest buyers, and this is like a back and forth. And while in crypto, you have to have your focus 24/7, 365. You're always open. There's always something new, and it's just it's totally different. And also, like you said, there's very kind of volatility is very different in these kinds of between these asset classes. But what we at Viska have been very focused on is we embrace the volatility of the industry. We see volatility as an opportunity, and that's what we're trying to tell investors, that a lot of people perceive this as very volatile, which it is, and they only see that as a threat. But we definitely see the volatility as an asset, as an opportunity.
Talk a little. Can you talk a little bit more about that and try to kind of help us understand like your mindset behind that? Because, you know, I've also, you know, heard this before, and I was starting. You know, I'm not a trader per se, but you know, I always like to understand the other professions and other sides of our industry, and a lot of I would say even, you know, hedge fund managers and a lot of these other organizations that are issuing ETFs and et cetera, right? You know, I think that volatility can be considered a good thing, while retail looks at it as, you know, a very negative thing. So help us understand a little bit from like your perspective why volatility can actually be a good thing.
Yeah, so it's just if you, it's all about the asymmetry. So the asymmetry in crypto is the best I've seen. This is the best asymmetric opportunity I've ever seen in my life. All right. So what does that mean?
Yeah.
It means like, and that's how I thought about Bitcoin early when I just discovered it. At the time, I was of the opinion like this may go to zero. It may go to zero. I'm not expecting it, but it may go to zero. But I can easily see a 5x, 10x from where I was looking at it in like 2019. And it, you know, and that's kind of how you're approaching. And isn't that a good expected value? Isn't that a good like risk reward? It's all about the risk reward.
Yeah.
And we aren't talking about, you know, we aren't saying to investors, you need to be 100% crypto. We're just trying to get people to do 1%, 2%, 5% maybe. Some are just under 1% with their like very wealthy individuals with just a tiny amount to start with. And that's great because we're talking about this as a great diversifier in a portfolio.
Yeah.
That is what we are selling. That is our selling point, or what we are talking about. That's the opportunity here. And with this volatility comes great opportunities. You just have to be able to manage the risk, manage the downside. But the upside potential is so much. And, you know, I get the question all the time from all people like, I would like to buy Bitcoin when it's not this volatile. And I say, you know, that's fine, but the upside is not going to be there when it's not volatile anymore. So when everybody gets Bitcoin, when everybody has bought Bitcoin, and when it's a mainstream asset in basically every portfolio, it's going to be boring. It's going to be, you know, it's not going to move like we see today. This is how I like how we view things. So you want to embrace the volatility. You want to realize that we are early. We are still early.
Yeah.
It sounds to everyone that comes in, oh, I'm so late. I should have bought it 10 years ago, whatever. But just if you look at the world, if you look at portfolios, we just got like just over a year ago, you know, we have Mr. Larry Fink. He puts on his tie in the morning and he goes to, and he runs the biggest asset manager in the world. And he said, buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a great diversifier. They just put it in their model.
Flight to safety. It's a flight to safety even.
So, and then you just, if you look at the investor base in the world, all the pension funds, all the big institutional allocators, most of them have zero exposure right now. Some of them have taken baby steps.
Yeah.
And I just feel there is a tidal wave coming in the coming years. It's not going to happen now in next month or next 6 months, but it's going to happen in the coming years. And so being a broker for all these years, I'm always thinking about flows, how are the flows to support, you know, the prices or not support them. So, and for me, the flow picture is just so great for, you know, first Bitcoin, and I think that will trickle down to all kinds of other interesting projects. But you have now Fidelity, you have BlackRock, and they are basically saying to their clients, this should be in your portfolio. You should put 1-2%. And just if you look at the bond and stock market is maybe $250 trillion. So 2% of that is $5 trillion. And like the whole market cap of Bitcoin isn't even 2.
Yeah, I
Just
know.
imagine if we get $1 trillion of inflow in the coming years,
Yeah.
that's going to increase the market cap by many more trillions. So it's just the flow picture looks really good. We are now in some kind of a headwind due to macroeconomic uncertainty. Trump obviously, picking fights with basically every other country on tariffs and all that stuff. This will blow over, and I'm super optimistic for the coming months. But I mean,
Yeah.
I think there will be volatility for the next weeks, maybe 2-3 months. But I think the second half of the year will be really strong.
Yeah, and traditionally, I mean, I think in the first quarter, of the year, there's usually a lot of volatility, but there's just so much positive news, and it seems like, I mean, within a day, there's just major things that are happening that are so productive, and I think really pushing us in the right direction. That you have to be able to, at a point as well, to be successful in this space, is kind of, if you're coming from the investment side, is to kind of detach yourself from the emotional state of it and really look at what's happening and understanding the underlying events and all the things that are setting up for, really laying the infrastructure and the railway for the future. So this brings me to another question. I know that you've spoken about the importance of digital assets and global finance a lot. And what do you think is the biggest challenge right now, kind of from where we are with crypto making it mainstream, and how is your organization kind of working on overcoming that challenge?
I think there are huge things happening which will help us making crypto more mainstream in the coming months, and that is the big change in the stance of the government in the USA, in the US. So we are not seeing it in prices at the moment, but that's big. That's due to other factors. That's due to the massive macroeconomic uncertainty. But if you just look at stablecoins, stablecoins is something that I think will grow enormously in the coming years. We have seen a lot of stablecoin growth, and when you understand stablecoins and when you understand how they can make payments faster, cheaper, and more effective, especially when you have good blockchains that have been reliable, like Solana, for example. Solana has been doing really well for the past year or a couple of years, after obviously having some troubles after the FTX collapse, and it had outages and all kinds of stuff, during the past, but it has shown to be really resilient. And to use stable coins on top of a blockchain like Solana, a really reliable network, you can pay with finality in seconds, very cheap, and this is just a game changer. And now you have the government in the US seeing this opportunity, that stable coins is actually something that can help them preserve the strength of the dollar, or the dollar as a reserve currency, because it actually, if stable coins grow in dollar terms, that will create demand for treasury bills. As we have seen, Tether is one of the biggest buyer of treasury bills in last year, bigger than Canada, bigger than all kinds of big nations. So if we continue to see stablecoin growth in US dollars, that will help mainstream adoption. And I think we will see companies welcoming you to pay with stables in their, like, directly in your wallet, like to their wallet. So this is just, you weren't really up for this when you had Gary Gensler at the SEC and he was ready to arrest you if you did something that might have been wrong or whatever. This is a security, or this is this and this and that. And this is out of the way. So the biggest economy in the world is now saying, we're going to lead in crypto. We're going to embrace this technology. So that is massive, and that is going to help mainstream adoption. this is also great for innovators that are trying to do some applications on top of blockchains, trying to get them out to users. And I think they're not as worried about being arrested to do stuff
Yeah.
in the US like they were just a year ago. So this is a massive change, and this will help mainstreaming crypto.
How do you think it's going to, because a lot of this obviously, the headwind is coming out of what's going on in the States, and this industry is obviously quite global. How do you think America trying to take the lead in this, how will this ultimately impact places in Europe and APAC, or even too, how is it going to impact Iceland, do you think?
Well, I mean, Iceland is a part of Europe. However, we are an island in the middle of the North Atlantic, so we're kind of between US and Europe, and we kind of relate to both.
Yeah.
Both the West and the East. But I worry for Europe in this regard, and the euro. And I was actually speaking at a panel in London early February, and there were only Europeans in the panel where we were speaking, and we were just talking about the lead that the US is taking now, and it was a consensus basically among the panelists that Europe lost the chance to lead in crypto. Because obviously the US had a really harsh stance against a lot of stuff in crypto with Gary Gensler at the helm, and so Europe had a chance to kind of take the lead at the time, and they didn't. And the consensus was now it's too late, and they just won't be able to catch up. And now the dollar, like stable coins, will take over. US will attract a lot of innovators, and so it's I think it could be quite difficult for Europe. They need to step up, and they've even said it themselves with the Mario Draghi report. Like they need to start focusing on less regulation and more growth thinking. So they have been very focused on having the regulatory framework like really stiff, and they've been proud to say that they have the best AI regulation in the world, but the problem is they don't have any AI companies.
Yeah.
So I don't really know if that's the right strategy.
Yeah, and with obviously I think that with Mika Majkar, that was a great, I would say, development in Europe, because it was laying down that kind of framework. But obviously organizations are trying to catch up with that. But I think that you still, with any business, whether you're stateside or abroad, you have to have that regulatory mindset, right? And always trying to be compliant. And I think that that's going to ultimately help too with the adoption, especially coming from the institutional side. So, with the growing interest from institutions in digital assets, and a lot of the recent developments with the ETFs, a lot of the good news that's coming out of the US, what do you think happens, for these large investors like the pension funds and the sovereign wealth funds and the family offices? Do you think that this, very safe 1%, 2% allocation, 4 or 5 years from now, just going to look like, tiny peanuts compared to what they really should be doing, or where, they're actually allocating their wealth?
I think we've started to see these kinds of investors are allocating to crypto. I think it's mostly Bitcoin to start with, and that's kind of understandable. We just saw recently the sovereign wealth fund of Abu Dhabi. They bought via the ETFs, and that's why I've been very vocal about the importance of the ETFs. They have been a great adoption tool, and that is due to various reasons. One of the reasons is that institutional investors have very strict protocols. They can only custody the asset at this one counterparty, or State Street, for example, or whatever. And you really can't buy Bitcoin and custody it at State Street, because in your wallet, that probably you will be able to do it, but it's not there yet. So then comes Larry Fink and wraps Bitcoin in this beautiful like ETF, takes a small fee. He custodies it via Coinbase, so you don't have to worry about any of this stuff, and you just hold, Bitcoin in your custody account, and BlackRock kind of vouches that it's all right. So this and it's also good for when people, like I've said, Larry Fink is probably the most influential person in asset management in the world. And it just means a lot when he says you should buy Bitcoin. It's good business for him, for sure. The ETFs, the BlackRock, the IBIT BlackRock ETFs, the best ETF launch in history of all ETFs in all asset classes.
It's amazing.
So, I mean, even if he believes in Bitcoin or not, it doesn't matter. It's good business for him, right? And I think they're just starting, and they're just going to keep preaching this. And that means we will continue. We've seen the first pension funds, the first sovereign wealth funds, and I just think the dominoes will keep falling one by one, where this will be. You will be out of the ordinary if you don't hold any Bitcoin like in a few years' time.
Yeah, and you were talking a little bit about this as well too, about the educational aspect of this, and I think that anyone that's been in the space for any amount of time knows that no matter what you do, that a portion of your role is going to be an educator. So yes. For blockchain, especially Bitcoin, digital assets, it's very technical. Do you feel that the individuals, your client base, that they are starting to become more savvy and understand this a lot better? And is this due in part to obviously the efforts of you and other individuals that are in that position to be in the power to educate? But do you also think that people are also starting to, at least maybe just within Iceland, go out and trying to do their own research and become more aware of this versus maybe 2 or 3, 4 years ago?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the best reason for you to, for you to get more information, to educate yourself on something, is to have skin in the game. And that's what I've been trying to tell investors. Just put the minimum amount. We have like a $80K US minimum amount. And we people that have, like a $50 million or whatever, just put 100K or whatever, and just start there and just, and that actually works. Like they actually start to think more about it when they open up their, the Yahoo Finance or CNBC, whatever, they look at the Bitcoin price all of a sudden. And so just, to get people to invest just a little helps them. That means they will notice it. They will read more about it. Yeah. On top of that, we do extensive investor letters, like investor briefings monthly. So we've investors have told us they're way too long usually. So because we write a lot of stuff about what's happening. We also write a lot of stuff about what's happening in the macro environment. We are a very macro focused fund as well. So this is a macro crypto briefing where we send every month to investors. So for the ones that actually bother to read it, they definitely have become more well equipped to understand everything that's happening in this world, being with us for almost 3 years. Yeah. So this is just the name of the game. You need to be constantly out there talking about this, mainstreaming this. And that was something that I realized that I would have to do if we to take this step to start our fund in Iceland. I was leaving as a partner at an investment bank, and I realized that I would probably be Mr. Crypto in Iceland after that, and I needed to be, because we need to talk about this. We need to get people to talk about this, to mainstream the concept of crypto. And now, just last week, I was in an interview where I was actually challenging our central bank governor to start exploring this.
Oh, that's fascinating. Tell me a little bit more about that. I mean, what was that conversation like? That must have been a heated debate, no doubt.
Well, I was just doing this like in a TV broadcast,
Yeah.
but he was not there. But I was just like openly challenging him to take a look, because what we're seeing, for example, in another European nation, in the Czech Republic, there the central bank governor has openly said that they are exploring Bitcoin. They are actively thinking about putting up to 5% of their reserves into Bitcoin, which is, they have 140 billion euro reserve. So, and they were talking about up to 5%. So that's like 7 billion euros, maybe almost $8 billion. I'm not saying they're going to do that tomorrow, but they are actually actively discussing it. Yeah. So this is a fellow European nation openly discussing this. And the central bank governor of the Czech Republic, he said, I urge other central bank governors to take a look. And I was just pulling on that thread and just kind of trying to bring this out in the open. And this is just what we need to do. Nothing will happen if nobody talks about these things and pokes, and because I'm willing to take this discussion anytime. And I think this is happening all around the world. Yeah. Like there are barriers being, put down or broken, and there are people all around the world talking about crypto, talking about why government needs to look into this, why central banks need to look into this, why institutions need to look into this, and slowly but surely we're winning. We're just gradually winning.
Yes, so I'm really happy. Interesting. It's interesting. I would love to see if Christine Lagarde eventually kind of changes her opinion on the adoption. Like I said, I just think that the fact that we're even having a conversation at the government level and at the central banks and the BISs of the world and the IMFs, these organizations are talking about it. It was something that was so taboo just a few years ago. Right. There were no publications. You really had to, when you're talking about do your own research, you had to really, really be in the weeds to even get a grasp or an inkling of what was going on at that high level. And now the conversation is here, which is really, really incredible. So that's just something that's fantastic. And in terms of, we say this word a lot, right? Do your own research. And I think that sometimes people feel that crypto, blockchain, digital assets, kind of whatever that umbrella is, that it's somewhat siloed and it operates fully on its own. Can you help us understand the importance of the macro, the microeconomic, the geopolitical, the socioeconomical things, like how all of that does come into play, and that crypto isn't just this little tiny thing that's got a $3 trillion market cap that's totally on its own and inclusive?
Yeah, so if we think about Bitcoin, for example, we live in a macroeconomic environment where there is increasing indebtedness, there is constant money printing going on, and those decisions are made by people in power, and they have an incentive to keep making these decisions. Now, Bitcoin is a system. It's a system which is it's independent of these people. It's not governed by Donald Trump, or it's not governed by some institution or IMF or whatever. So, and this is exactly what blockchain is about, and what we need. We need a system that is incorruptible, that is not always taking into account some incentives by some politicians or some corporate heads or whatever. So we have come up with this technology. The world has now seen this technology where you have a decentralized power, and Bitcoin is obviously the most decentralized, the most secure, and it's just something you can't corrupt. And this is so important at this point in time, where we see the deglobalization is happening. The trust between nations is eroding. Uh, the everything is getting more polarized. So this is something that is totally unique. It's totally unbiased, and it's totally it has no race or religion or anything. So this is exactly the kind of thing we need
For
in
this
the world
times,
right
yeah.
now. And you can say, we often talk about Bitcoin as the digital gold, and obviously gold has thousands of years of history, like the regular gold.
Yeah.
And when is gold most important? It's at times of stress. It's when inflation picks up. If you just look at the from 1970 to 1980 is like 100% inflation accumulated in the States.
Yeah.
Gold like rallied. Bonds were decimated, or at least they really couldn't keep up. And I think we're kind of entering this kind of regime, and the kind of asset like Bitcoin is perfect for this. But you can also, just so I don't only speak about Bitcoin, I mean, I think we will see blockchain technology, and that won't be Bitcoin, is replacing payment rails, replacing, I think securities will be tokenized. Larry Fink has also said that we will put markets on the blockchain, and it makes perfect sense. And now we're seeing blockchains like Solana, which have been reliable, fast, cheap, effective, which can handle a lot of throughput without the cost rising massively. So this, all of a sudden, this is you're starting to see this. This is probably going to take 10-15 years, but you're going to have these kind of open networks, independent, open, decentralized networks, which will be the base for all kinds of payments, markets, lending protocols, whatever. And I'm really excited about all this. But we are seeing some progress right now in this area.
Yeah, a lot of progress despite the price, right? It's always something going on, and thinking about Iceland, being a smaller nation and a smaller financial hub, but obviously very wealthy. How do you see, kind of your country contributing to this kind of global digital asset ecosystem? And are there any lessons that you've learned in your journey so far that you feel maybe other nation states could apply and maybe adopt?
So I could make the case that we have already contributed. Like we had played an important part in Bitcoin mining in the early days. So Iceland is an energy-rich country. We have hydropower and geothermal power, and we had a lot of excess energy maybe 10 years ago, and up until now. We're actually now don't have much of the excess energy, unfortunately. But so there was a lot of Bitcoin mining done like a few years ago, and there's still some, but it was proportionally a lot bigger. So we had like 1% of the hash power at some point in time. Like
massive.
So it was actually a really popular place to come, and we built out a lot of the data centers, which kind of started out using Bitcoin. So it was a mutually beneficial relationship where Bitcoin miners came and used the excess energy. They helped the data centers kind of get their footing and getting profitable. And once they became profitable, they upped their equipment. They got it like a better, a more proper clients, or if you want to call them, or some traditional clients, so to say, which helped them getting better funding and all that stuff. So it's kind of helped the building out a data center, a few data centers here that has been very beneficial for the owners of them, for Iceland, and so that's a great that's something that has happened. But I think we can still do more. We're a small market. We're very technology based. We are in the like we have good infrastructure.
Yes.
Relatively educated people. So this is often a good test market, and it could be utilized as a good test market for some products in a small sample size. I'm not sure exactly how we do that, but And I would love that the government would take big steps, the central bank would take big steps, but
Yes.
we have some work to do on that front, I have to tell you.
And you've been innovative, you've led the way, the first. What do you think in terms of competition, right? There's kind of this tall poppy syndrome when you're usually the first and you kind of take all the risk and you do all the hard work, then you get copycats and people that just want to, essentially mimic what you've done. And, that's a good problem to have, I believe. But what do you think is your competitive advantage? Because with success does come competition. So how are you preparing for that, or how are you thinking about that? And are you thinking about maybe even some of these more traditional companies as quote unquote competition, or do you think of it more as an opportunity for collaboration?
I mostly think of them as an opportunity for collaboration, and we have actually seen that happening already. So we have big banks here that have big asset management teams where they have all of these clients like in their wealth management, and they're asking questions about crypto, and we are the go-to firm in Iceland, and we can work with them, and there are many examples of them delivering clients to us, and they just we just hand them shares right back into their custody, so they're not. So that has just been going really well, and I met the banks a lot, and these asset management companies here.
What are those conversations like with the banks and the asset? Like, what are those conversations like?
They have been changing since we started. In 2022 when we started, it was more difficult. They were not as open. People were still talking about, isn't it just, money laundering and criminals and all that stuff.
Drug trafficking, the typical thing.
Yeah. So you kind of just have to correct that, and you need to kind of point out, this is happening, this is happening, this is how the technology works. But today I can just say, Larry Fink is talking about this, Fidelity is talking about this, the majority of the top 20 asset managers in the world are taking steps into digital assets.
Yeah.
So I don't have to tell you now that this is not just criminals. You can see it right here, right? So all this development has helped my job a lot, and our job at Viska, because you don't have to take my word for it. It's happening by like really big institutions in the out there in the big world. So, but on the topic of you're saying like with competition locally, I actually think the pie is ready to be like grown massively. Nice. We don't have to eat the whole pie. We can just, and I think that it will be beneficial for us if there were other companies speaking in the manner like we are, trying to educate investors, trying to get people to understand that they're underallocated. That's what we're trying to say. Like, you are underallocated. That's basically everyone in Iceland almost is underallocated, or at least many of them. And we're trying to change that. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be, all in, levered long. That's not what we're talking about here. We're just saying, why don't you put 2%, 3%, 5%? And you don't have to have the sleepless nights. We'll take care of that for you. We'll monitor this 24/7.
Yeah. And, with all the incredible positive news, there may soon be a time where there's just an incredible case of FOMO, fear of missing out, for those who don't know about the acronym, and a lot of people are trying to kind of rush into this. And then, that's going to be another unique problem that I'm sure that you're preparing for as well too. But because our time is almost up here today, I've had an incredible and enjoyable time having a conversation with you, and I've learned a lot that I'm going to go back and continue to educate myself on as well too. But I want to leave the last few minutes so here for you to talk a little bit more about your team, your organization. I know you were talking about some of the founders and your origin story, but what makes you unique as an organization? Tell us a little bit about your roadmap. What are some things that you're working on? And as you know, our audience is very diverse, and we have some people that would be considered OGs to newbies to people that are employed to people that may be looking to transition or contribute in some form or fashion. So are you hiring? Are there any volunteer opportunities? What about internships? Just help us understand, how my community and other people out there that aren't able to tune in today can be involved in some capacity with your organization, what you're trying to achieve in your mission.
Yeah. Okay. Let me. So it's a lot of stuff to talk about. So first, I would like to say we have a great diverse team. There were 6 partners and we are 6 partners originally, and we are four of us are actively working within Viska. So we have different kinds of backgrounds, as I've mentioned earlier, from the traditional finance, from the tax side. We have our Kristjansson, who is one of the best programmers in Iceland, and was actually head of the Icelandic Blockchain Foundation, which was a
Nice.
company here, like trying to spread the word in Iceland, like in 2018, 19. So he's one of the OGs here. So we have a good team, but we're always looking. We have kind of an intern, or we have a guy that does like an analyst who works for us as well. We're always looking for opportunities on how to expand. We're also working hard to try to figure out how we can get AI to help us grow.
Yeah.
Obviously, the world is changing fast, and
Yes.
that is something that is interesting to explore, both in just your traditional work, help you with media stuff, all kinds of stuff, but also in trading. So
Yeah.
that's something that we are not a systematic fund, originally, or we have a discretionary mandate, but we obviously want to explore all kinds of options to help get our strategies. Maybe we'll have some other strategies. Maybe we'll implement our current strategy. So this is just a constant iteration. You're never finalized, and you just have to be constantly improving. We made a lot of mistakes along the way, and it's just important to realize that and always try to get better in what you do.
Yes.
So our aim is to grow. Our aim is to help spread the word on this asset class. We have mostly been focusing on growing locally. We have a Cayman entity as well, which we maybe haven't been focusing on growing that yet, but that's something that we are working on as well. So that's something that we might also, maybe that entails hiring someone to help us do that at some point, or so. But our focus has been on the local side. That's where we have been gaining a lot of momentum, and that's a lot of work.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure
we're always thinking about ways to expand in a smart way.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. I will let you off a few minutes here. I know it's a little bit later in the evening where you are, and I'm sure that you've had a great start to your day, and I've had a really enjoyable conversation with you once again. So thank you for joining and sharing your wonderful wisdom and insights with our incredible community here. Look forward to another incredible conversation. We do have great guests coming up this Friday for another episode of Just Shilling. We will put some short clips up on socials here on LinkedIn, and we'll get this full episode up on YouTube for those that were not able to join us here live today. But once again, Dadi, thank you so much. Really, really enjoy everything that you've been able to share. I've learned a lot, and hopefully some people in our audience will take some opportunities to reach out to you. What's the best way that folks can connect with you or follow you?
So I am on LinkedIn, just my name, Dadi Kristjansson, and I also use X quite a bit.
Nice.
So it's at DADIKR. It's like my first 6 letters of my name. So
nice.
That's kind of the best way to follow me. Yeah. So I try to stay active and follow what's happening.
Yeah, that's a full-time job in itself, is just following everything going on. Are you going to be going to any conferences or anything like that in the near future?
Yeah, I will be speaking at Digi Assets in London in June.
Nice.
Perhaps some other before that. We're just talking about that, and I also will have some in the fall. So there's always something going on that front. I would also like to add that I would suggest you could follow Viska Digital Assets on LinkedIn. We post some stuff there, and you can also, from there, you can sign up on an email list for a Substack list where we post regularly all kinds of stuff on crypto. So
nice.
But
awesome.
Travel, also really great to be here, and really want to thank you for a great chat.
Yes, thank you. Likewise. Well, folks, you could have been doing anything in the world, but you chose to share your valuable time with us today, and we do appreciate it. So have a great day, everyone. Stay safe and look forward to the next episode. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.
All right, we're done.